Uncertainty is one of the only certainties. If we wait for certainty to take action, we will wait forever. My career previously was focused mainly on protecting value. Now I have the opportunity to add to it the creating of value. They analyze the results and adapt accordingly. They don't see that as a failure, see failure in a negative way. They see it as learning and progress. I'm so happy that you asked me that question because I have a different perspective on resilience. To me, resilience is the capability of an organization to absorb uncertainty, change, and adversity, and proactively adapt in a complex and changing environment.
I find very interesting and valuable. So you also invitate for action is you need to start, you need to take action into creating value.
Digitalization there is an absolute enabler to make better, quicker, and more consistent decisions, actions, learning from it, etc. We can't be afraid of those. We need to lean into it. We need to become comfortable and competent in dealing with it and using it. I'm a strong advocate of this, is build your own mental models and use ISO as a baseline. But you can't use ISO as a recipe and only use it as it is there. The key learning there for me was people. People and their connections and their abilities and their drive to just go the extra mile, support you, and find the right equipment for these units. And really, it comes back to collaboration.
So Martinus, thank you very much for joining this podcast. So let's start the conversation. So you spent decades working in the intersection of risk, resilience, and strategy. Why do you think uncertainty, more than risk itself, has become such a defining factor for competitiveness today?
Well, Alejandro, thank you very much for the opportunity and to have the opportunity to have a discussion with you. I certainly value multiple perspectives and good discussions, so I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, I think change is constant, and the change is taking place faster now than any time in the past. Uncertainty is one of the only certainties. If we wait for certainty to take action, we will wait forever. We need to get competent and confident in dealing with uncertainty. That's the world that we live in. When we get competent and confident in dealing with uncertainty, we can thrive through uncertainty. We can see it as a journey from the unknown to the known, and we can leverage uncertainty to achieve our objectives. And that's why I think dealing with uncertainty, one can achieve a competitive advantage.
And Martinus, looking back at your career, what moments or experiences led you to focus so deeply on enterprise risk management and organizational resilience?
I qualified as an engineer, and I did 10 years of engineering work at an electrical utility power plant in South Africa. So after those 10 years, I transitioned to risk management, and I was asked to establish the risk management function at that same power plant. And at the time, I had no idea what it was. So this was in the year 2000. There was no ISO standard yet at that time. And I established it and got it going for a number of years. And then in 2009, risk management took a massive step forward for us when the first ISO standard was published. So I've now been responsible for risk management for 25 years. I had the opportunity to develop and implement risk management departments and functions on several occasions in my career. The most exciting of those was when I had the opportunity to establish what was called the Risk and Assurance Department at a new power plant, the biggest in the Philippines. And I took the development and implementation of risk management there through all the stages of development, all the problems that we had with it. Operated it for a number of years, and when I left there 5 years later, it was a very successful business. So I was in the fortunate position to own risk management functions in on a number of times during my career. I had the opportunity to practically see it through all the stages of development, implementation, and operation. And I was responsible for the outcomes of the processes and recommendations. So really, when the ISO standard was initially published in 2009, I had the opportunity to do the training at all the power plants in South Africa and do their initial risk assessments, facilitate their risk assessments. That was invaluable experience, and it certainly fast-tracked my understanding of risk management and the ISO standard, although at the time in a very narrow window of implementation. It was at a power plant. And a power plant is a massive capital investment, not too much opportunity for new things. It's more about protecting a value than creating value. But still, it was a wonderful learning curve in dealing with technical aspects of risk management, improving my facilitation skills, dealing with people, and in the process still, obtaining results. I always found that interaction with key stakeholders was important, and I always used to say there's often more value in the discussion that you have during an interaction than in the documented outcome. I made extensive use of the bow tie risk assessment at the time because it showed you all the important things in one view. Being on a power plant and having an engineering background certainly served me well during that time as well. And in that time, we dealt with what I call full spectrum of the risk management functions: resilience, risk management, business continuity, incident management when things go wrong, and incident investigations at the end to close it out. And all of that I'm now using as an independent consultant, where I am the founder of Excellent Consulting, and I focus on thriving through uncertainty. Whereas my career previously was focused mainly on protecting value, now I have the opportunity to add to it the creating of value.
Oh, that's interesting. So we're going to talk about the transition from protecting to creating value that I think is the most important thing right now. But I'm just curious when you mentioned that you you start doing risk management before ISO standards. So what was the standard in the 90s, or how do you do risk management? Like what are the process, or is like it was any other framework, or how it was?
No, no. You see, at the time when I had that portfolio, there were a number of other things in the portfolio as well. I was called the risk management manager, but it included other things like safety, health, environment, quality, document control, security, a number of other things. And the establishment of the risk principles and processes as we know it now really at that time kind of took a back seat compared to some of the other things.
Mhm.
And the development of the understanding in the processes certainly were slow. I recall when I went for the training, the ISO 31000 training, which was done by Grant Purdy in South Africa.
Mhm.
It was a mindset shift for me. I thought it would be easier to start it from a blank page than to unlearn the things that I learned myself and established myself. Yeah, and it's a long time ago, Alejandro. So I can't remember all the detail, but there was certainly a step change in how we did things once the standard was published.
And do you remember anything in particular that you had to unlearn in that time?
Some of the principles, I sat in that class with Grant, um, and it felt to me as if it was slow learning for me because yeah, I just remember the feeling of having to unlearn. I don't particularly remember the detail. At
Okay.
least I was in a position to ask questions, which when you have a blank page, maybe you don't, and you can just drink it all in.
Mhm.
But it was a good experience.
Good. And Martinez, you often advocate for integrated frameworks and collaboration. Where did you, where did that philosophy come from, and how did it evolve through your hands-on work with organizations?
Yeah, so it really started when you talk about integrated frameworks and collaboration. Certainly, in what I do now, I see those as two of the main principles of integrated risk management. Um, and I quickly learned that as far as integration is concerned, you need a framework, a set of concepts and practices built around the principles for a specific concept or topic. Because I work in a very structured way, and that certainly helped me to give structure to what I'm doing. Um, Integration also connects different frameworks for different purposes. So apart from the framework as you have it per ISO, there are other frameworks that one uses in various of the steps of the process. Um, and the integration thereof is important. So it's the integration of the frameworks. It connects the different aspects. And as I said, to me, the integration between resilience, risk, business continuity, and problem solving is very important. And it's also about integrating or connecting activities across the organization. Um, massively important. It gives you the opportunity to get to know the full organization and have an impact on the full organization. Yeah, and the principles behind the frameworks are important, and that you understand the principles. And integration is one of the principles for me. It's also in the ISO standard as one of the principles. And to me, integration is also ultimately about, after you've done the analysis, where you pull things apart, is putting it back together and synthesizing the information to get to good results. But then really collaboration, massively important, and that's also what I said, in the introduction. Collaborating and sharing different perspectives, very, very important. It's important to elicit the perspectives of others. We all think we know it all, but we don't. And it is just so important to get the perspectives of others in getting to better answers. Risk is caused by uncertainty, in my view, and uncertainty is a deficiency of information related to knowledge and understanding. So a significant part of risk management relates to understanding cause and effect relationships, understanding information, understanding the knowledge and understanding of others, so that you can deal with these cause and effect relationships properly. So collaboration involves conversations about information, sharing of knowledge, sharing of understanding, and it's often reflected ultimately in cause and effect relationships. And often it also involving other skilled people for certain parts of the process, where you may need somebody with advanced quantitative analysis skills, and to collaborate with them to do certain things. So that's why it's important, and that's how it came about from my side. And how you elicit information to get to better understanding through collaboration.
Good. I like this idea of uncertainty, and when you mentioned we always think that we know it all, and we need to be aware that we don't, and that's the point of risk management. Is there's a lot of things that could happen that we don't know. So how can we manage and navigate that uncertainty at the end of the day? So Martinus, what fundamentally separates organizations that see risks as a constraint from those that use uncertainty as a source of a strategic advantage?
I think organizations that view risk as a constraint typically protect themselves against the negative aspects, instead of leveraging the positive. And in business, the purpose of business is, in some way or description, is to sustainably create value. The purpose of risk management, to me, and this is what also as per ISO, is to sustainably create and protect value. I prefer the word preserve value, but before you can protect something, you have to create it. So that is definitely the first step. So my my way of describing it is to say we want to achieve, to thrive through uncertainty. And thrive to me means that you achieve your objectives with confidence. If there's a deviation from the expected, let it rather be a positive deviation and not a negative one. So the through of thrive through uncertainty I see in two different ways, and this is what I'll use to separate organizations that see it as a constraint versus not. So firstly, through can be seen as a journey from the unknown or the less known to the known. And if you don't have the appetite for that journey, you're going to struggle. We only achieve our objectives by taking action. And we use risk management to properly consider the situation and go from the unknown or the lesser known to a higher level of certainty. At least we get to a better level of certainty, never perfect, when we make a decision, and hopefully even better by the time we implement the action. The certainty only comes once we have the outcome. And this outcome can be positive or negative. It can meet our expectations or not. But at least we have the certainty. And to get to that point is we need to start. We just need to start doing something. We have the lesson, and we can adapt our thinking and processes once we have the outcome. There are companies that really leverage this journey. They experiment, they take action, they analyze the results and adapt accordingly. They don't see that as a failure, see failure in a negative way. They see it as learning and progress. I'm not sure whether you know Stephen Bartlett, but he advocates that his companies should outfail their competition. And he actually has a department that challenges the company internally and tries to disrupt them so that they can learn from it. So it's a journey from the unknown to the better known, and ultimately, once you have the results, it leaves some level of certainty about that. But it's also to thrive through uncertainty, from this side to that side, from uncertainty to certainty, and we all face the same uncertainty. It's not different. So we have a choice to see it as a constraint or an opportunity to use uncertainty as a mechanism. And that's really what I'm trying to say. Through, meaning use it as a mechanism for a competitive advantage. That we develop the capability to deal with uncertainty more effectively than our competitors. We use it, in other words, as leverage for a competitive advantage. The way we do this is to lean into uncertainty. You can't avoid it. We need to understand the types of uncertainty, and that's a whole subject on its own, and how you deal with the different types of uncertainty in different ways. Understand that you can't wait for perfect certainty to make decisions. We cannot eliminate risk, especially on the strategic side. So really the distinction to me between the companies is those that say they want to eliminate risk, whereas others are saying, especially for strategic risk, you need to take risk firstly, and create the value through that. Once you've created the value, by all means, then protect it. Then we talk about the operational risk management, and then certainly you do need to protect that. But first, create it.
Well, you mentioned a lot of interesting things, but I want to go back because I'm curious when you mentioned that you prefer preserve value than protect value, or that. Why do you say that? What's the difference between preserve and protect?
No real big difference. It's just the kind of the negative connotation about protecting. I also feel that when you protect and when you defend,
Mhm.
you're not curious and you don't learn. So for you to learn, you need to be curious, while preserving the value that you have. We see it a lot in LinkedIn as well, where there are comments about defending a very specific position. Once you do that, you stop learning. And protecting, defending, to me just doesn't have a good connotation, and I'd rather call just that we preserve what we have, while we focus on creating more value, because you can't sustain by just protecting. The world around you is changing, and if you just protect or even preserve what you have, you will fall behind. Others will go past you, and we all want to be better off, whether it's individually or as organizations.
Good. And Martinez, that's a very good explanation. So I also want you to help me to understand another difference, because you mentioned a lot about risks, business continuity, and resilience. And we also learn a lot from, okay, it's suppose business resilient is the I don't know, the improvement or the evolution of business continuity. But for you, what's the difference between business continuity and resilience?
Oh, all right. I'm so happy that you asked me that question, because I have a different perspective on resilience. So to me, resilience is the capability of an organization to absorb uncertainty, change, and adversity, and adversity, and proactively adapt in a complex and changing environment. The definition in ISO, in the ISO 31000 series, is very much closely related to this. It talks about adapting to a complex and changing environment. And to me, the complex and changing environment is a cause of risk or a source of risk, which is, if you look at the bow tie, it's on the left-hand side, it's on the cause side. That's the proactive side. That's the preventative side. So I do not see resilience only in the context of how you respond to an event once it has happened, or a change in conditions. To me, it is risk management is first priority is being proactive and preventative. And this is where resilience to me comes in. So I have resilience, risk, business continuity, and if the risk happens, you have problem solving to find out why did that happen. So my view about resilience is it's also described and defined as a capability. Now, a capability is proactive. It's done up front. You can't, even for business continuity, you can't expect to do that once things go wrong. You need to build that capability proactively and upfront. Business continuity to me is about, if a risk does materialize, how do you respond to that? And to me, there are three things that you typically would do. Is you would say, even if the event happens, how can you not have a consequence? Secondly, how can you minimize the extent of the consequence? Keep the consequence as small as possible. And lastly, how can you recover from the consequence as quickly as possible? And in doing those, resilience applies. But to me, the important part of resilience is on the proactive side.
Get it. I want to go back to your last answer that you mentioned a lot of things that I find very interesting and valuable. So you also invitate for action is you need to start, you need to take action into creating value. And so my question is, your do it with you approach stand out. Why is involving people directly in analysis and solutions building so important for making enterprise risk management sustainable?
Yeah. So firstly, it is collaboration is important because, as I've said earlier, we leverage the perspectives of others and all important stakeholders. Now, if you talk about leveraging that for a client, also is the client, whether the client is internally or externally, whether you're the risk department in a company or you're a consultant going into a company, but the client has the technical knowledge. They have the intellectual property. They have the history. They have the context, and they're the ones accountable once you walk out the door, whether you're the risk department in that company or you're external. The collaboration also creates confidence and understanding in the process that you're following. And if you work with them, and that's to me what collaboration is about. If you work with them, you create understanding in the process that you're following. It enables, if you're from the outside, it enables the client to make a decision whether they want to continue using you or whether they are confident to follow the process themselves. So it's a learning process that you take them through in terms of content, processes, and intent. Why are we following those processes in the way that we do? It is also so important these days in business that you do something for the greater good and to involve others and collaborate with them and transfer knowledge and skills. To me, is a part of doing something for the greater good, for society, and lifting the waterline throughout the risk environment or the risk field.
So, Martinus, now let's talk about the future. With AI, cyber threats, geopolitical tension, accelerating uncertainty, how do you see operational resilience reshaping the future of ERM?
I think the resilience, firstly, I said, is about being proactive. It means that you need to, for me, firstly, use your imagination. Imagine what can happen, what can go wrong. How can you deal with that? Be proactive. You need to try and foresee and prepare, not predict. Adapt, because what worked yesterday may not work as well today. And I think with that mindset, and those some principles, talking about digitization, AI, cyber, etc. I think moving towards with the field that we're in, towards digitalization or digitalization there is an absolute enabler to make better, quicker, and more consistent decisions, actions, learning from it, etc. Information, obviously, because it's digital, is available to everyone who needs it, and it enables the better, quicker updates and decisions, real-time information where possible. And then certainly digital corporate governance frameworks provide confidence to management, to boards, and to other stakeholders about the current situation in the organization, and that it's up to date and accurate. AI and cyber risks are, to me, good examples of uncertainty that we need to lean into. Those are reality. We can't be afraid of those. We need to lean into it. We need to become comfortable and competent in dealing with it and using it. And I talked earlier about using uncertainty as a mechanism. We can also use AI as a mechanism to deal with uncertainty and gain a competitive advantage. You touched on geopolitical uncertainty as well. I think that's key with what is happening around us. But like many other risks that are exposed to, and this we see more and more, the decisions of individuals in terms of geopolitical events. Those are extremely difficult to predict. This is where we need to sit back and use our imagination about what can happen, whether it's what we saw between Russia and the Ukraine, whether in Syria, where overnight a country leader goes off and the next day it's quite chaotic, but individual decisions. Also what we see in the US. And with this imagining and foreseeing not try and predict, but this is where, to me, scenario analysis comes in as one of the ways to help us to deal with the risk.
Good. And for fast growing or transforming organizations, what are the three non-negotiable practices they must adopt to remain competitive in certain environments?
Okay. The first thing, and I'm a strong advocate of this, is do things. Build your own mental models and use ISO as a baseline. But you can't use ISO as a recipe and only use it as it is there. So build your own mental models, develop your own framework. It is so important to develop a deep understanding of the principles, so that you can deal with the events and things that happen that you did not imagine, that you could not foresee, because some of the principles may still be applicable. So you need to do that, build your own mental models, build your own intellectual property, understand the principles, understand the frameworks, and processes so well that you can deal with anything. Secondly, I think is to develop a deep understanding of context of the organization, and although the ISO standard deals with it, not in much detail. If you understand the context of the organization very well, and with a triangle that goes from purpose to mission, vision, strategy, objectives, and so on, if you delve into that with a lot of detail and make the links of what supports what, which processes support which objectives, what are the risks related to that, and you link them, the risks pop out before you've identified, gotten to the step of risk identification. For example, if you see, gee whiz, this process impacts so many of our objectives, we had better look after this carefully. You've not even looked at the controls and the adequacy and effectiveness of controls. So to me, the second thing is really context, especially strategic risk is in the context, and understanding the context and in dealing with the context very well. The third one, last one, I think, is to understand that risk, that we're working in a continuum. Things change constantly. We cannot think that we work in discrete descriptions of risk in a linear environment, or things that, time-bound principles. Things change. We with what I advocated about doing and learning in the first one that I mentioned now, we need to be at the bleeding edge of developments. We need to shed some blood. We need to make some mistakes. That's how we learn quicker. We need to obviously reflect. Key to me is that we reflect on why things work or didn't work. If you don't do that, you lose out on creating value, because then you repeat things, and instead of progressing, you're repeating. It also comes back to the thing about being curious, and not defending historical things. Be curious, learn, adapt, And we need to keep up with the pace of business. That's our client. We need to keep up with the pace at which they develop.
Interesting. What a master class of risk management. So, for the last, Martinus, can you share a moment in your own career when uncertainty felt uncomfortable or risky, but ultimately became a positive turning point, and what it taught you as a leader?
I think I want to go to accepting the challenge to move to the Philippines and start or help with the new power plant from scratch. No guidance, no head office that tells you what you need to do, how you need to do it. But really, what I want to highlight is in that time, COVID struck. And that created significant uncertainty, and things developed very quickly. We had very wise and guys that foresaw certain things, and the uncertainty for me there is I was tasked to establish COVID care units on site to the extent of ICU level, intensive care units on site, because the senior management foresaw that the hospitals will become full, and we need to take care of our staff on site, and it happened. So very early in COVID, you needed to determine how many units do we need, where do we get the equipment, and everybody was looking for the same equipment worldwide. We got it done. It was tough. The toughest thing was getting the equipment. But you asked about the learning. The key learning there for me was people. People and their connections and their abilities and their drive to just go the extra mile, support you, and find the right equipment, and obviously ultimately doctors and nurses that we had to contract as well for these units. And really it comes back to collaboration and making use of the people that you have, what they know and who they know.
Amazing. Martinus, I think this episode was 10,000 times better than I ever expected. Thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you very much for all the experience and knowledge that you share with us. You're very generous, and thank you very much. I hope our audience enjoy this episode as much as I do.
You are most welcome. Lovely to talk to you.
Thanks. I hope to see you next time in either risk management school. The risk management school is for beginners, and I think this conversation was for elevate the conversation in or in risk academy or risk efforts to trying to educate and share information with the new generations or people that are gonna start doing risk management. So thank you very much for.
No, you're most welcome. It's wonderful to share my perspectives, and to have the opportunity for that.
Good. So thank you to our audience. If you want to know, please comments either in YouTube or in the whatever platform you listen in this podcast. Share your comments below, and also write what topics or what knowledge you want to know about risk management, and subscribe if you like, and see you in the next episode of this risk management podcast by Pirani. Thank you very much. Bye.